Hi there, Alison here with another Cab Franc du jour. Today we're in St-Nicolas-de-Bourgueil and we're looking at the Domaine Amirault 2018 Les Quarterons St-Nicolas-de-Bourgueil. The estate has been around for almost 200 years. It was established in the 1830s by Octave Amirault. Today the sixth generation winery is being run by Xavier and Agnès and his wife Agnès. They farm 34 hectares of vines primarily in the appellation of Saint-Nicolas-de-Bourgueil, but they do now have some parcels in Bourgueil as well. Now, the vineyards were certified organic in 2008 and certified biodynamic in 2011. Now, the commune of Saint-Nicolas-de-Bourgueil is right next door to the commune of Bourgueil, but it is in fact its own appellation, and it's unique in the Loire Valley, being the only single village or single commune appellation in the region. Now, the lore suggests that back in the mid-1930s, when the appellation rules for Bourgueil were being drawn up, that the mayor of Saint-Nicolas-de-Bourgueil was a rather large vineyard holder at the time, and he managed to successfully lobby for the commune of Saint-Nicolas-de-Bourgueil to have its own appellation separate from the other 7 communes that make up the Bourgueil AOP. Now, in wine text, Saint-Nicolas-de-Bourgueil and Bourgueil are often lumped together in terms of their terroir, and from a bird's eye view, there are a lot of similarities here for sure, but of course the beauty is in the details, and you know about me and Cabernet Franc, it's all about the details. So there's some distinct features with regards to Saint-Nicolas-de-Bourgueil in terms of its location that makes its terroir a little bit different. So here where Saint-Nicolas-de-Bourgueil is located, the Loire River takes a little bit of a dogleg, kind of northwest towards Saumur, and as a result, Saint-Nicolas-de-Bourgueil is actually kind of a bit more on a south-southwest orientation, whereas the majority of the Bourgueil AOP is on a bit more of a south-southeast orientation. Also here at Saint-Nicolas-de-Bourgueil, we're very close to the opening of the Vienne River tributary. The proximity of where we are here to the river, in addition to this positioning of this sort of south-southwest orientation, makes the microclimate in Bourgueil a little bit warmer than that of Bourgueil. And in most vintages, the vignerons in Saint-Nicolas-de-Bourgueil will actually harvest their grapes anywhere from 8 to 10 days earlier than those in Bourgueil. Now, in terms of soils, we do see those 3 distinct soil types that we see in Bourgueil. So we have the recent alluvial silty sandy soils, the ancient alluvial sandy gravelly soils, and then the clay limestone tuffeau soils of the slopes. But where Saint-Nicolas-de-Bourgueil is located, this is where the terraces sort of open up a little bit as we kind of move west. And as a result, there's a little less of the recent alluvial soils and a little less of the limestone soils. And as a result, about 65% of the vines in the appellation are planted on these ancient alluvial sandy gravelly soils. So the combination of the slightly warmer microclimate and the majority of the vines being on the sandy gravelly soils, the wines of Saint-Nicolas-de-Bourgueil can actually be characterized as a bit more early drinking in terms of style, a bit more supple and less tannic than the wines of Bourgueil. Now, getting back to Domaine Amirault, as I mentioned, they have 34 hectares of vines, but what's important to note in terms of their sort of practices is they actually have subdivided these 34 hectares into 58 individual parcels and then group these parcels into 12 distinct terroir units. And in any given vintage, they will vinify anywhere from 40 to 45 individual cuvées from these 58 parcels. And then through the art of assemblage, they will take these cuvées and then create different expressions of Cabernet Franc from different terroirs to really be a representation of the estate as well as the vintage. Now for this wine, this is their workhorse wine. It represents about 30% of their production, and it's coming from 13 hectares of Cabernet Franc vines, ranging in age anywhere from as young as 5 years upwards to 90 years. And the parcels are strewn all the way, all across sort of the appellation. So we're getting a little bit of the silty sandy soils, some of the sandy gravelly soils, some of the tuffeau soils. There's even pockets that have more flint in them, and there's pockets that have a little bit more iron oxide in them as well. So what the Domaine is really trying to do is they're choosing sort of 14 to 20 different cuvées every given vintage to create this sort of very all-encompassing expression and picture of what Saint-Nicolas-de-Bourgueil is all about to Domaine Amirault. Now, from a winemaking perspective, things are very straightforward here. We're talking hand-harvested fruit, destemmed. Fermentation takes place with indigenous yeast in stainless steel, and then it spends anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks on skins, and obviously that depends on the soil and the specific parcel and cuvee. And then the wine is then transferred into concrete for final aging for about 12 months before bottling. So into the wine. Now the nose has a really wonderful kind of savory, wild fruited kind of profile to it. Getting some nice red fruits. There's a little bit of blue fruits here too. There's sort of a cherry note. There's a bit of a wild strawberry note and a bit of a wild blueberry note as well. But very pretty on the nose. The pyrazines, they are present, but they're nicely in balance with the fruit. And I would suggest that this wine does lean a little bit more on the savory side as opposed to fruitier. And they come through for me as sort of a nice herbal undertone, kind of like rosemary. And then there's a lovely kind of foresty element to the wine as well, kind of like a cedar wood note. Wow. The acidity on this wine is so vibrant, really quite lively. And also rather high tone. There's a very distinctive kind of high pitched sort of energy to the acidity on this wine. The tannins are very supple in the mouth, moderate level of tannins, and there is a certain roundness to the palate as well. But they do have a kind of a crushed velvety sort of texture. There's a little bit of chalkiness on the finish as well. There's a nice cranberry note on the palate, and a really nice spicy note on the palate as well, like sort of a cinnamon and allspice thing as well. And what really I'm impressed with here is how sort of the integration of the fruit and the tannins is in this wine. The fruit is really enveloping those tannins quite nicely, and at the same time the tannins are really supporting the fruit really well, and there's a really fantastic integration in terms of those two elements in this wine. This wine has a very sort of classic feel to it. It has a really wonderful kind of lively energy. In fact, the palate even is a little bit on the juicier side, which gives the wine a certain degree of kind of buoyancy. It's very companionable, quite genteel, very friendly. It's the sort of wine that I think would work very well on a table. It does have that sort of vin de soif character to it, but it also has this sort of enough structure that I think it would pair very well with a number of different dishes. I'm immediately thinking something more like a roasted duck breast with kind of a gratin dauphinois on the side or something like that, but very good food wine for sure. It's definitely sort of that bistro style. And actually, it's funny, last week I talked about music in my post, and coincidentally, Domaine Amirault also likes to pair their Cabernet Franc with music. And the song that they chose for this wine is Don't Stop Me Now by Queen. And I think that song really does sort of sum up the energy of this wine. It's about having a good time, having fun, being with friends, being with people you love around you, and having great conversation, great food, and just good times overall. It's just a delicious expression of Cabernet Franc, and I absolutely adore it. If you've had this wine before, let me know what you thought of it in the comments below. And of course, as always, I will be back again soon with another wine. Cheers.